Hello and welcome to the Matching Mom Jeans podcast. I'm Shelby.
I'm Nicole, and today we have Rory. Da 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 da! Air horn.
The first non-mom guest.
Yeah, you're the first non-mom guest.
Oh.
If you can include you as not a mom, because technically you do co-assist my momhood sometimes.
I was there for
And
quite a bit of it.
I mean, you did just spend the last semester as a nanny, right?
Yes, that is true. I have
Oh.
been seeing
See, so she's
since
like,
a long time.
we'll consider her like a fourth of a mom.
Yeah, I was gonna go 0.35. So
Oh, see, there we go.
that works really well.
Nice.
Not sure if we should do the 3/5. I don't know if that's a good.
A nice adjacent momhood.
That's a good reference to make.
What's 3/5 reference?
0.35.
Was
Oh, okay, yes.
I mean, 0.35 is different from 3/5.
Well, I said 0.35. You went 3/5 with it.
Well, yeah, but it's a 3 to 5 together. What do you expect?
See, this is an excellent introduction to why we have a representative of Gen Z on the podcast, because their brains work in mysterious
Massively
ways.
different ways.
So mysterious.
Yes, I'm sure the entirety of the Gen Z populace will be
Glad
just so glad that they have me to represent their entire existence, all of their opinions, all encompassing. Guarantee absolutely nothing I say will be inaccurate or not.
That's the most anti-Gen Z thing I've ever heard.
Exactly.
Nobody has opinions other than it's all no.
It's only me.
It's only my no.
They've elected me, and by
Yes.
that I mean no.
No, my real
Also-
job is to say I'm not sure. We're all just really confused. Everyone is different. I don't know.
Well, so the reason that you're here is because when this podcast comes out next week, it will be June 1st, which is the beginning of Pride Month.
Pride Month.
I know, it's going to be awesome.
Yay.
Rory and I really like Pride Month.
Oh, yes.
The most colorful of all the months.
It is
It
the
is.
most colorful of all the
Obviously.
months.
Except for the
And
sweltering heat, at least in
I know.
our region.
I know. And it rains every time we try to go to Pride.
Always. Oh,
It is not. It's not for the faint of heart for more than one reason.
Oh, yes.
Very real. But 20% of Gen Z identifies as part of LGBT plus, which we've selected that term today.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
there's lots of different ways to use it.
I was told that maybe we don't say alphabet mafia anymore, but maybe we do. I don't know.
Sure they're
I
really
feel like you pigeonhole yourself as an older person when you use alphabet mafia, because
you're 30 years old.
Like
Okay.
more of a Twitter thing than like a TikTok and Instagram thing.
Very
I
true.
don't know.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
gotta
know.
you're the Twitter generation instead of the TikTok generation.
My Twitter, rest in peace.
You deactivated it, didn't you?
I did. I had it.
Nice.
I had it from 2009
Cool of a
until
site.
last year when everything started going down.
Yes.
Mine
it was
technically-
downhill.
Mine technically still exists, but it's not living on my phone anymore, which is basically the graveyard.
Yeah.
Because it and Facebook are in a graveyard now.
I have one old Twitter account that I made at like 12.
Don't say that. They will kick you out of Gen Z.
Well, it was the profile picture was a glass of milk, and that was like, I don't know why I did that. I thought
Right.
I don't know. I thought it was funny, but I didn't do anything on it.
You
Like,
just
it
had
I
a glass of
had
milk
a glass of
profile.
milk as a Twitter profile. I think probably because they like block you from going through things, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
gotta make it a. I don't know. It was stupid.
That's
I
hilarious.
was trying to figure out like a daily dose of whatever joke, but can't think of one.
No, I just
so
hate milk. I just hate it.
There is a
That's
significant
so
hatred
funny.
of milk coming from Rory.
Yes.
okay,
So,
so 20%. That's a pretty high percentage of the population.
it is,
And you have to keep in mind that those are people who self-identify in the LGBT plus community.
and are willing to
because-
take a
Yes, are willing to take a survey.
yes.
Because if you look at every statistic is going to be a little skewed, because if you want to look at like, oh, gay people didn't exist in the 1900s. Yes, they did. They just didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
They weren't filling out surveys. They were like, this isn't real. This is not a thing.
Yeah.
So it's all going
Or
to
they told people, but not within the like the boundaries
Government
of
fear.
Yes.
the people that would have known or reported or
asylum.
Yeah. There's a difference between, hey, yo, I told my sister, and I'm in a room full of 100 people and I'm going to raise my hand.
Yeah.
So it could possibly be that Gen Z is just the first generation that feels free enough
Yes. That is
to identify.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the perfect argument, because I think as parents you have a dual responsibility to educate your child to continue that trend of the world being accepting at large and society being accepting at large and affirming, but also then creating an environment in your own home where your child can have that conversation with you. So it's kind of a in the home and out of the home responsibility, very similar to like the conversation around consent. Like you have to have a conversation about teaching your child how consent applies to their own body and their own experiences, and also how it applies to other people and their experiences. So it's kind of a weird, like, it's not, you don't just wait till your child's a teenager or middle schooler or junior high or whatever and says, hey, I'm having these feelings. Like, you kind of have to start it when they're very young.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think a lot of people see the conversation around like Pride Month and stuff as like a politically correct conversation, if anything. And unless it's within their own house, like unless they have like a very personal stake in Pride Month, it's more like a politically correct thing. But I would argue that in some ways, our generation needs to be moving toward the morally correctness of acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Really good.
and that starts at a much younger age than politically correct. Like, children who can't vote can still be kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Okay.
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I wanted Rory to be the person to talk about this is because existing in Gen Z, and especially this first year at college, you're coming home with a lot of stories about different friends and how they represent on that kind of spectrum of acceptance and affirmation.
And
because
how
I think,
their family.
can you explain to us the difference between acceptance and like being an affirming environment?
Yes. Well, yes, because I have several friends whose families are like accepting. They're like, hey, cool, what is the whole, you don't have to understand to be like, what is the whole pronoun situation? Like,
Yeah.
what is this gonna be? I won't kick you out of the house if you come home with a boy or something like that. Affirming can be, oh, whoops, I hit the cord.
I think it's fine.
Hope that didn't make a noise. Apologies. So you don't necessarily have to understand or to, I don't know, really just
You don't have to be an expert.
agree. You don't have to be an expert. You don't even have to agree. If you're going to unconditionally love your child and accept that sometimes things change, sometimes things will be like this for the rest of their life, it doesn't really matter to you because you love them and you want to continue to have a relationship with them and you want them to be okay. Like, that is acceptance. Like, you can be affirming, but either way, you will just accept that your child is the way that they are and what they want to do, and just be with them through that journey and that transformation. And, understand that sometimes things are concrete and sometimes they're not. And it's just kind of,
Yeah, we've
what
had
it
that
is.
we've had that conversation, my husband and I, several times, of like, what do we do if one of our children identifies like changes the way they want to identify and then changes again. And it's one of those things where like you don't do anything. You just continue the same level of love and acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as parents of younger children, you start that conversation early of like, not everything is binary. I mean, ha ha ha. But also
We'll
not
talk about that in a
everything is,
second.
not everything is binary. Not everything is black and white. It's not a all of a sudden this person's in this category and they can't go back and forth. Like, that's why it's a spectrum. And kind of this, is there a different word other than spectrum? I don't know.
Fluidity.
That's a good word.
Fluidity.
Fluidity. Yeah.
There we
Wow, I
go.
can't even say that word.
It's a
But
hard
just
word.
funny
I think
because you
I
work
think the
with
way
the
Rory
fluid dynamics.
described it is just
True.
so simple. Like,
Yeah.
and as adults, I feel like the conversation becomes so complicated, but it's just
Yeah.
so simple. This is your child. This is your child's friend. This is your child's neighbor. This is your child's classmate. Like, why can you not just simply accept them and
Yeah.
love them?
Yeah. You don't have to make it, all complicated. You don't have to really. I mean, you can go and be like, I'm going to do a bunch of research on this. I don't really understand this, but don't necessarily put the burden on them to be like, well, are you going to explain this to me?
Yeah,
Are you going
that's a
to?
really good point, because
Yeah.
especially if your child comes to you and says, "I'm questioning these things," I don't think it would be very fair to be like, "Well, you need to tell me right now where you're landing on this," because that is a little unfair. If your child is coming to you and saying, "I'm not 100% sure," like it's very not fair to pigeonhole them.
Yeah.
And I do think we see that a lot, or at least I see that with clients that I've worked with, is what they can't get their head wrapped around is the gray areas.
Yeah.
They want to know, well, if my child is identifying as non-binary, now my head is exploding, because are they male? Are they female? How do I, they want to make this 110% switch
Yeah.
of, okay, well, all of a sudden I don't have a daughter, I have a son, or I don't have a son, I have a daughter. And it's like, that's not
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah.
That's also focusing on how it affects you rather than how it affects your child.
Ta-da! Yeah, no, that's 100% true. But I can tell you from
I mean,
years of experience, it's so hard to get a parent to understand that if they are caught up in the egocentrism of, oh my gosh, my identity as a mom of a boy or a mom of a girl is now being challenged. It's almost like a personal attack. And I've seen parents react that way. And that's actually, in some ways, you can argue that that's valid, because relationships are, they're between two people. And if one person is moving in that relationship or changing in that relationship, the relationship cannot be rigid. It has to be a living, breathing thing that can move and change and grow. And I feel like as parents, we don't do that a lot with our children. It is, I am your
no.
parent, and it's stable and sturdy and ironclad.
Yeah.
And that is not real as your parent grows up. And that's actually another reason that I considered having Rory on the podcast for another conversation, which is like how you go from being a parent of a child to suddenly your child is a young adult.
Yeah.
Because Rory and I've talked long and hard about like the different stages of parenting. And when you work in parent education, you talk about like, you are a lifeguard until your child is 6. And then you are an instructor until your child is 12, or, these are all ranges. But then at
Yeah.
12,
Right.
you become like a coach, and you kind of coach them. And then at 18, 19, 20 years old, you have the opportunity to be a confidant, a friend, a safe place. And a lot of times parents are like, okay, I'm done. I'm just your parent. You respect me. And it's like, and that's not what we want. That's not the goal in engaging with your child. You want to meet them at these different stages in the level that they need. I think I think Rory would agree with me on this. I don't think that Rory needs the same level of supervision that my 2-year-old does.
Well, we
I would hope
think
not.
so.
But I think there's a lot of this growing conversation that I feel like if people would recognize it more, it'd be very easily applicable. Because you have this thing, you're sending your child off to kindergarten, your child is going into elementary school and middle school for the first time. Oh, she's not my baby girl anymore. She's growing up. Well, sometimes she's not your baby girl anymore. She might be your baby boy now. Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But it's the
Well,
same level of, oh, things are changing, but that doesn't mean they're not still my child. You just have to move along with them instead of staying, because having your child grow past you is like one of the worst experiences for both you and the and the parent. You know, it's
Yeah.
not
Well,
fun.
I do think that some of the issue, if we want to call it issue, with like parents, especially like mothers, having a struggle with the like adjustment with the fluidity, like all that thing, is because so much of motherhood shakes your confidence. And so once you get something down and like concrete it in and you figure it out, like it would be nice if that did not change. You know, like this is like you know like let's take it a step back and look at something different. Like if your child suddenly becomes a vegetarian
Oh, welcome to
and
my
all of a
life.
sudden you
Everybody's all over
can't
the
go
place.
to chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that
Hey,
was a
my
real
child
transition.
will finally eat peanut butter. Now we can get my child's iron up. Never
Oh.
mind. All of a sudden,
Wow.
my child is refusing to eat peanut butter.
Putting me on
Oh,
blast.
Fired. Shots
Shots
fired.
My 2-year-old is been identified as anemic, and we thought we had fixed it by giving him this iron supported peanut butter because it's his favorite thing in the world, and now he won't touch
He
it.
loves peanut butter. Now he won't put it in his mouth ever.
So now
Poor
we have to actually
baby.
give him. Yeah, last night I gave him his like first dose of his like real iron support like supplement.
Which I had to take at one point. Terrible.
Yeah,
experience.
Rory can
It
attest
tastes
to
like
how bad
rotten
this
meat.
is.
It's very gross.
But he walked around going yuck yuck yuck,
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
and I was like, "Can you just eat your peanut butter, man?"
But you know what I mean? Like I feel like so much is constantly changing. Like and so like even if we're talking about, you know, teenagers, like if between junior year and senior year, it's not just the classes, the activities, the prepping for college, the tests and stuff, and all of that's changing. The shoe size is changing. The you know like the size your child wears is changing. If suddenly they don't have the same name, or they don't fundamentally use the same pronouns, I could see why that would be earth shaking. And like I do think that that burden to handle your own earth shaking, like your own earthquake, I do think that burden does not need to be on the child who already has something going on, or the adult child who has something going on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rory, what'd you say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that might be a decent way to bond, because your child is probably going through the same level of, holy crap, what is this? What is going on? And you can go, are you really confused? Because I'm really confused too. You know, let's talk about that.
Gentle parenting. We just got to validate those emotions and work through them, don't we? Oh, man.
I saw the funniest video the other day that was, I never said I was a gentle parent. I am gentle parenting. Don't put me in that box. I have the opportunity to not gentle today. Which is actually
it's an
really
action
good
verb
example, because like, you know, it may grow and change based on the day.
Yeah.
I might not gentle parent today.
So Rory, let's talk about the and maybe you don't have an answer for this, but let's talk about the circumstance where someone gets it wrong. Like say, do you have any friends or classmates or anyone whose parents have got it wrong? Like at what point is it so unsupportive that relationship is gone? Or is this something that like your parents are your parents, and if it takes them longer to figure out
what level of forgiveness can there be?
Because I don't want my daughter to grow up and then if I react poorly to something, or even if it's not pride related or anything like that, like even if she just tells me she never wants to get her driver's license, like I don't know, like I don't want to react so poorly that love is not there. Like, is this a love conquers all situation?
See, I think that is very interesting, because I was confused for a minute, because I'm so used to seeing most of the friends at college that I have are parents who just straight up refuse. If I ignore it, if I say it's not true, then it's not real.
Interesting.
I'm not going to use the pronouns that you want. I'm going to use the name that I gave you, not the name that you feel most comfortable with right now. I refuse to do this. That is most of the experience that I've seen. And so that is kind of a different experience, I think,
Well,
because you're looking at them and all of a sudden it's not a parent, you've made yourself an enemy. Versus if you are very confused and having a really hard time and you respond really badly, I think that all a child wants is for their parent to love them and to be okay with them.
So would you say that?
So I think that there's really no bridge that can be burned because you're always going to have this like I don't know, what am I trying to say? Like you're always going to be, oh thank God, you know, my mom and my dad, they still love me. You know, if you make that clear, anything else, if you know, if you get it wrong, if you misgender them over and over and over again, it's okay. Because if you make it clear that you know and you accept and you're just having a hard time, I mean that's
so
totally fine.
in the
you know?
So
situation
if
of
that
some of your
foundation
friends
is there,
Yes, exactly. You have that foundation of, you know, being being mature enough and recognizing your parent is mature enough to have a hard time with things. That doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes, just like you can make mistakes. So
okay.
I don't know.
What
Am I describing
about
this well?
what about your friends who do have that rejection? I mean, so I think what so I don't know that you've told me about any of your friends who have like a an aggressive set of
Yes.
parents where because I think that would be so there's like kind of the like accepting and affirming and then the other end of the spectrum I would argue is you know the straight up rejection and aggression.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is a lot of your friends kind of fall in this middle area of like we're just gonna ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're not kicking you out of the house, but we're not going to use these things. We're not going to accept it. I think
and that probably is a little easier to swallow than kind of the aggression against who you are as a person.
Yeah, I would say it depends on how young you are because if you're in the really kind of fragile stages of teenagehood and you go to a parent and they reject, you don't have that strong foundation of like I may not understand, but I'm going to accept it because I still love you. Like if you have that good foundation, you can really make it through whatever. But if I mean it really this might be a little dark. It really makes the difference between your adult child not talking to you when they become 18 versus your adult child not making it to 18 and committing suicide.
So actually I was about
like
to say that
be
I've been digging into the Trevor Project. I have several friends who volunteer with the Trevor Project. And I think they're an excellent source of information. And so like they have all of this information for parents. So I'm going to link them underneath the show notes. But there is actually a conversation on their website for parents that is like it's a poll of like children or not, you know, the child side of the equation, teenagers. And then like what affirming action was taken by your parent and how it impacted suicidality and suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And so,
wow.
So, if your parent is not, so let's say like it's in percentages. So it cuts it in half. It cuts suicidality as a whole. So that's attempts, that's conversations, that's ideations. It cuts it in half. So like what they're saying is 12% of respondents who had non-affirming action experienced suicidality, and only 6% who had like a affirming response had suicidality. And so that is a big difference. 12% versus 6% is a big conversation when you're talking about.
Explain to those of who don't know what's going on. What an affirming action would be. Is that just like the conversation is had and you say okay?
So actually,
or is that accepting?
They have another chart, which is one of my favorites. That is the frequency of supportive parent caregiver actions and So this was fascinating because it kind of talks about the different options that parents have and what parents are actually truly doing. And this was all from 2022. So 75% identified that their parent has been welcoming and kind to their friends who identify as LGBT plus.
Yeah.
Only 67% said that their parents have talked respectfully about their own identities. Um, there are 52% that say that their gender expression was supported. Um, 44% say that their parents educated themselves about LGBT plus. So I thought that was kind of low. Like only 44% of parents are actually putting the effort into to educate themselves. And
Which seems
only
like the bare minimum.
yeah, well, and then
Yeah.
43% um, of parents openly and respectfully discussed issues affecting the LGBT plus community with their child. So it's
Like
interesting to see
political
that
issues, like the
because
crazy Target thing.
oh yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a second. So, but I think that's such an interesting drop from 75% being like, yeah, they accept my friends,
Yeah.
down to, only 44 and 43% having open conversations and educating themselves about what's going on with their child. That's kind of bonkers because if you think about like if you put it into a different issue, so let's talk about my 2-year-old's anemia. If I didn't bother, like if only 44% of parents who were told by pediatricians like, hey, your child's blood test came back, he's a little anemic, like if only 44% of parents bothered to figure out what anemia was and what foods would raise their child's iron, like that's like a health issue straight
Right.
across. And so
Yeah.
gender identity, sexual preferences, all of that is also a health issue. I mean, we're talking about 5 simple things that parents can do. Welcome and be kind to
To
friends.
keep their children alive.
Yes.
Exactly. To
Yes.
Like
keep
we're
your
not
child
talking
alive, to
about
keep your child growing into a full-fledged person, which should be your goal as a parent.
Yeah.
Your
well,
goal
and
should
what
not be
kills me
control.
is so much of the argument is, well, they may be too young to make this decision. Well, then get them older. Help them live.
Yes.
You
Help
know what I
them.
mean? Like, I mean, that's a real thing though. Like, if you don't think your 15-year-old is old enough to make a decision about what gender they want to be, that's a whole different discussion. But the bare minimum is getting them to 16, to getting them to 17, to getting them to
Yeah.
22.
And
Like, get them to the full frontal lobe first. That would
yeah.
be ideal.
And that was
Yeah.
what
That would be.
was so heartbreaking working with some of the parents that I've worked with in the past because they don't get that. I've actually worked with parents who do not understand the actual risk. And sometimes that is just speak no evil, hear no evil, see no
If
evil
I
of like
can't
la
see it, it's
la la
not
la la la
there.
la
Yeah.
la. And like it was a really hard conversation to be like, statistically, your child is at risk. And they'd be like, well, I know that they went to the hospital for suicidality, but they would never. And
Yeah.
it's
They
like,
know I love them. Are you sure about that?
yeah, are
Have you
you
asked
positive?
That's what the conversation is about. You don't have to agree, but you're going to have to teach them open communication at some point so that they grow into a mature adult and they get into healthy relationships,
Well, and
friendships,
so
and romantic, and
so here's an
whatever.
interesting thing. Those statistics that I just went through only apply to cisgender. And so that's CIS gender, which are
You
is that
identify as the sex you were born with.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you
Cis
were
means
I still feel
same.
at home.
cis
Yeah.
means same. There you
Same
go.
one you were born with. I
So
feel at home with what I was assigned
So
with.
what's interesting is how quickly those drop when your child, youth, however you want to say it, is identifying among non-binary, transgender, and gender questioning. Those drop by, let me see, 5 to 10% straight across the board. So
Wow.
what we're seeing is that, like, again, I think it's so interesting that you said this of like, it's almost like the parents own, like, well, who does that make me question is directly impacting how they engage with their child.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. And you can think, I mean, if you want to feel like you try to understand more why this would affect your child so negatively, is, well, you're not just rejecting something that they enjoy or something that they kind of partake in, you're rejecting their identity as a person. And there's a lot of this stuff that I see about parents being like, about parents grieving, which is on the one hand valid, because it is an earth-shaking thing, as Shelby said. Like, it is like a thing where it's like, wow, I've been using the same pronouns and the same name for blah 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 years, and all of a sudden this is all changed. But your child isn't gone unless you push them away. They're still there.
That's a really,
they're right there. And some people will choose to essentially bury their children and ignore the person that they want to become by clinging on to this grief. And
do you feel like you see that happen? Do you feel like that happens more with kind of the non-cis people?
Yes.
So like that's when your child's identifying transgender, gender
about,
questioning. And again, I think that does go back to that sometimes, and this drives me bonkers. Of like, you see this on social media all the time of like, mom of boys, or I'm a girl mom, you know, like when your child is pretty young. And it is super interesting to me. And I get a little frustrated because when people find out that I am parenting 2 little boys, as they identify right now, it's automatically this conversation of like, oh, they wear you out. You must be so tired. Like, again, like we're taking children, very small children, and assigning these qualities to them, and therefore assigning these qualities to their parents.
Take my 16-month-old, however old she is, 17-month-old,
something.
Take her to the grocery store in one of the hand-me-downs from your son and no ponytails, and then take her to the grocery store with a flowered shirt on and pigtails and see what everybody assigns to her based on whether or not she's got pigtails.
Exactly.
Like this is one of those things where like, if you don't want to feel like your earth gets shaken, don't build your earth on shaky ground.
Yes, that's such a good way to put that.
And I think that our generation of mothers is on their way to improving this in some ways, because like the people that are like the people that are grieving the loss of their children, I cannot even imagine that, because my perspective as a mother, granted, I have so much experience. I am 17 months into this.
You're living it.
But you know what I mean? Like my goal as a mother is to help her become who she is. Not define what I want her to be. Or turn her into a mini me. Or, you know what I mean? Like any of these goals that I feel like I saw 10, 15 years ago. And so like, as this conversation changes, I do wonder how many of those statistics will drop just because of things like
Rory just said the Victorian times, and my instinct was to be like the 1990s.
Like Pride and Prejudice style. Dang it, I got another girl. Now I have to make her a proper woman. And lay her off. We don't have to do that anymore.
Well,
you don't have to limit yourself as much.
The Victorian times were also completely different because it was like, another woman. I can trade her for cows.
Yes. Well, but no, I think you're onto something, because there's an interesting conversation in social media and parenting right now that's like, you do realize you're naming, when you choose a name for your child, you're naming a future adult.
Yes.
Like,
it is rather
sometimes
strange.
There is this weird, like, pathological, like, I need to say this name. Like, I will never forget sitting with my husband in bed, 8 months pregnant, and him throwing out name ideas, because we did not name our child until 24 hours after he was born.
We were waiting with bated breath.
And him being like, okay, say this name to a 5-year-old. And so we would yell it out like a 5-year-old was running into the street. And then he'd be like, and now picture this person stomping up and down the stairs, and you're yelling at them to stop stomping up the stairs. And now yell it out like your child is practicing driving and trying to kill you. And now,
and then put doctor in front of it.
And now, put doctor in front of it, or say it being announced
Shake
at graduation.
or something.
You know, like I met a little child the other day whose name was Wolfgang. Like, you know, like what
like
is that?
Mozart.
Is that Beethoven or whatever?
Mozart.
Okay, yeah. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's kind of a cute little kid name. And it obviously
go
could be
to the OBGYN named Wolfgang.
Well, yeah. Well, but what I was going to say is, like, go to junior high named Wolfgang.
Oh.
Like, that's, you know, like, you have to think your child's going to be a dynamic person for 80 years, you hope. Hopefully. And it's like, can you imagine Grandpa Wolfgang?
Maybe that's like a super hopeful name. Like, maybe that naming process involved this world is going to be the place that will accept a Wolfgang in 10 years. You know what I mean? Like
the future to be like, I will say in this is pure Gen Z perspective, naming your child Wolfgang opens them up to be nicknamed Wolf, which does imply your child is going to be a furry. So if you don't want that.
Oh, we are not ready for
we
furries.
Cannot open the door. We cannot open the door to things I don't understand. I haven't done any research for this topic.
I need to do my research on
Please don't do your research on furries.
You don't need to.
Yes,
don't worry, your child will be happy to explain that to you.
I was about to say.
They will find out by themselves.
Just remember, the mental health 911 is 988. If your child identifies as a furry, please go ahead and contact the emergency services appropriate to you.
Precautionary emergency service visit.
On this podcast in like 10 years, and they're like, they were discriminatory.
I know.
Like, no.
The furry community, we support you. We are slightly afraid of you, but we do support you.
We're pretty. We're like at least 85% sure that we support you. we don't really know, but based on the look in Rory's eyes, I think I do.
I think we do. That is really funny, Rory. You're like,
I have a friend who's a furry. It's fine. No,
it's fine.
We really actually don't care.
Yes. No, you're fine.
We spent this whole podcast. Trust me, we don't
live your
care
life.
What
just
you identify as.
Just don't.
That's true.
Chase me down a dark alley. That's all I care about. That is the only problem I have.
Fears about
this is my boundary. I will accept you at all times, except for in a dark alley. And that is only because I'm a little afraid of those. I'm a little afraid of the giant costumed people at Disneyland as well. So
yes, mascots. My university that I go to has a mascot. Terrifying.
And it's like
because it's a humanoid mascot.
I was about to say it's a fake human, so that's even
it's a fake
scarier.
Human, and so the eyes are like giant, and I'm like, ugh.
No, thank you.
Please don't get near me.
You mentioned Target,
so
and I don't know. Like, sis, you mentioned Target, and I don't know much about what's going on there. I saw like a blip headline, so do I even want to know?
Well, obviously, you have to be a Southern white woman to understand why so many of your neighbors are boycotting Target.
Born and raised in Seattle.
Boycotting Target?
Wait, no. Target is their favorite land.
Yes.
Target is their Disney World.
Yes.
They can't be expected to leave Target.
Slushies and popcorn there.
Not the slushies and popcorn. So
it's Starbucks. You can start with Starbucks and move on to a popcorn and a slushie.
This week, the Target Pride collection came out, and it has resulted in a lot
Pride collection
of backlash because of the sizes of some of the
they make
some of the like affirming apparel and the stickers and that kind of stuff.
I have dressed my children.
And there's languages like here's the thing. Here's the thing that I do. I do not fight on social media. I have some good friends who fight on social media, but I do not do it. But here's my thing. It kills me because people will be like, why would this shirt that says, I'm glad you're gay, need to be in a size 2T? And I'm like, Probably because there are people who are gay who have 2-year-olds.
Exactly.
Shocking.
Like the child themselves probably doesn't understand. But so why are they boycotting Target and not Old Navy? Because I have dressed my small children in Pride apparel from Old Navy since 2019. Like when I found out Old Navy does Pride stuff, we go there a lot of times. I didn't know Target did.
Well, some of the pride, they feel like it's stepped over a line if it's got more than rainbows on it. We're just, I mean, like, we can, okay, fine, we'll give you rainbows. But like, it gets really, really, really nasty, some of the stuff happening online. I think Target is seen as more of like a wholesome, family friendly kind of place, especially in the South, because that is where the stay-at-home moms go to walk. But also there are some gender affirming like bathing suits that have come out in the adult section or even in the teen section, because that is how bodies work. Some of us who are 30 years old still wear teen size clothing that have things like tuckable on the swimsuit.
Okay.
And that really scares some moms at Target, okay?
Rory has died.
And it's just like I want people to be able to be honest with how they feel. Like I do believe in free speech, but I believe that your ability to swing your arms wildly stops when you slap someone else in the face, okay? Like,
I like
That's
that.
a good
I like
quote.
that visualization.
I was imagining more like, isn't this really the same concept as if you don't want your child to wear a shirt that says smoke weed every day and has a picture of Pikachu smoking a blunt, then just don't buy it for them.
And if
right.
Then
Well,
if they have the money to buy it themselves, explain. Okay, we're not going to wear that to grandma and grandpa's.
yes, we're not going to
Like,
wear that to Thanksgiving.
Again, if you are going back,
that's where the Target outrage comes from, is because apparently Target should be the kind of place where anybody can shop, because this is not the Walmart. You know, like, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Target.
My question is, again, and this would be the question that I would ask any client that I was working with on this who had an issue with this, is like, why does it directly impact you, what's being sold in a store?
Yes.
Well, because their children are asking them questions.
Yeah,
That's why it's impacting them.
You don't want to
It's
have
because their children are old enough to read and are asking them questions.
Yes.
And they have not done the tiny bit of effort to educate themselves on what their stance is and what they want to say. And so they are put on the spot not knowing what to say. Because here's the thing. If a 7-year-old asks you what a tuckable swimsuit is, you say, you don't need to tuck anything yet. And if you do, let me know. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I have two thoughts on that, because one, like when we had an episode about consent, we talked about like, you want your child to be learning at home what your values are. You don't want the internet teaching them.
Uh-huh.
So like first,
right.
But
Yes.
also I feel like people's prejudices make things harder, because if you have a almost 6-year-old boy like I do, and you walk into Target and you see pretty lacy bras, because those are hanging out in Target,
Right.
and he goes, what's that? I want one. You say, I'm sorry, you don't have the reason to need one. That is a piece of clothing that has a purpose. You don't have the purpose for that. We'll talk about it later.
And then you say,
let's
do
go
you like it because it's purple, or do you like it because it's lacy? Because they do have purple things in your size and they do have lacy things in your size. You know what I mean? Like,
What do you
like-
like about it? Yeah.
dig a little bit deeper of
Yeah.
like, you know, is because I like my 2-year-old, and Rory can attest to this. My 2-year-old favorite color right now is pink, because it's
Or rainbow.
bright, or rainbow. Yeah, too.
He says rainbow is a color.
He says rainbow's a color, and
Yes,
it
he
is his
loves it.
favorite. But like, we have not had any gay panic in our house about it.
well,
Like,
my
just
female child's favorite color right now is blue.
exactly.
Wow.
And
But
nobody bats an eye at her.
Girl color.
But I
Who
feel like
cares?
so many people would be like, oh my gosh, my 2-year-old son's favorite color is pink. And it's like, do you know why he likes pink? Because it's bright.
Yes.
Because it is huge and
eye-catching.
bright and stares at him in his face. And also, he loves Miss Rachel, who always wears pink. Like,
There.
that's it.
Yeah.
Done.
The
That's-
bottom line is that people are so terrified because of their own prejudices that their children will be turned LGBT, they'll be turned gay by the very conversation of it. When in reality, that's not a thing. There is a culture around, if you are accepting, you are more likely to look inside yourself and go, I wonder if this is something that I'm interested in. Not really sure. I'm going to question it a bit. There isn't... What you really want is to teach your child to be, as grandma would say, accepting and loving of everyone. You're not there to judge. It's not your job to judge. And I don't care who you think its job is to judge. What, did that make sense? Was that a sentence?
It's close. It was really close. We'll accept it.
Well,
it's your job.
Yeah.
To judge.
yes. Well, one is there's the moral obligation, but also if you truly educate yourself, like as a parent, and even as someone who may be questioning, you see that like it's not all rainbows. It's not, I mean, like just talking about the statistics, like it's not something that your child is going to learn about and be like, yes, that sounds fun. Let's go down this road. Like
I know.
that is, and I think that's what so many people are afraid of. So many people are like, oh my gosh, if I teach my child the truth about all this stuff, but it's like, we just read the mental health statistics. Like it's a hard road. If you actually know what is going, like what the battle to be fought is to be accepted in a world that wildly doesn't accept you, then one, as a parent, you're like, that would be such a hard road. But as a teenager, that would be a hard. Why do you think people have stayed in the closet for so long? Because the closet was safe.
Nobody wants to sit on Christmas morning and listen to a non-affirming family member just talk at them for hours and hours, whether or not they're a teenager or not. Like nobody wants to just sit on the couch and be like, great, I have to listen to a lecture because you can't shut up about it. Like it's much easier to just keep it to yourself. Yeah. And so it's like, you want your child to talk. You have your hand raised, Rory.
Yes, I have my hand raised.
Because school.
Because Shelby brought up, I forgot what she brought up. She brought up something. Anyways. Because as a young adult, I just went to university. And whoop-de-doo. University. College, whatever. As a young adult, you know, you're there in a crowd of your peers. And you really have an opportunity, have a chance to look in on yourself and find out, you know, what's going on with your identity. And I already knew I was bisexual. And then I was like, wow, I think I'm non-binary. And then everything collapsed in on us. And all of a sudden, in like the span of a few years, it is suddenly more unsafe to be not cisgender than it has been for a long time. Because instead of just a social context, there are now actual laws and things that are trying to be passed. There's actual stuff that is trying to go on. Like, I went to college for my freshman year, and like the first half, I was like, this is so cool. It's so interesting to know myself. And then I was like, maybe I should just go back in the closet.
Can I shove myself back in the closet?
Can I go back? It was nice there.
Yeah, it was nice. So like it's not only scary to have your family to not want to have conversations, but it's also like, oh cool.
Yeah.
Is the rest of the world gonna round me up and kill me? Like
no, that's
how
real.
long is it gonna take before this is
like
real danger?
Over Christmas break, like Rory and I and one of her friends enjoyed going to sorry, I just used her and sometimes Rory uses they. Anyways, Rory, a friend of Rory's, and I went to their first drag show. And it was so much fun.
So fun.
And I was so excited because they were telling me behind the bar, they were talking about how we have like family days sometimes. And I was getting very excited because I was like, this is a great opportunity to bring the kids around as they get a little bit older and, you know, like once a year have an exposure, or they have like New Year's Eve parties, things like that. And now that's not a thing
And
anymore.
then they banned it.
Yep.
Yay!
Ta-da! Now in Tennessee, you
Bye-bye.
can't. And it was just like, that was sad because I was thinking, oh, this is a fun time to have a conversation. We enjoyed ourselves that day.
Yeah, it was very fun.
And even though there was only like 8 people there because it was Christmas break.
Yes.
But you know, when you remove things out of prejudice, you're also taking things away from the people who don't have those prejudices. And, you know, in Tennessee right now, which is just really hard because we do have the drag band. We do have, in fact, you know, we have artists who will not come and do concerts in Tennessee. And I completely support that because they are making, you know, they are using their voice to support a community that needs it.
Yeah.
But also like, well, that sucks. We can't go to that concert.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't want to walk in Target and have a hard conversation with my child. But when you take all of those things away, you take away the opportunity to have conversations from other families.
Well,
You know,
that's my thing about the banning Target is I'm like, okay, like that's like a 20th of the store,
Yeah.
you know? Like but what about the groceries?
yeah, or the
Or like our Target specifically has like an Ulta and an Apple store in it. Like what if you need your phone fixed and you can't because you didn't want to walk by a onesie that said, you know, like yay pride on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think like in a conversation of how you're raising your children, because like when we're talking to parents of children of any ages, if you are teaching your child prejudices, you are in essence teaching your child limits. You are putting your child in a box and saying, I don't trust you to learn about the world and follow the beliefs and values that I have tried to teach you. And one, how sad that is for your child. And two, you're teaching yourself and your child to live in fear of just knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing wrong. You know, we made the joke about furries, and that's not meant to be a prejudice, but it is a conversation where it's like, I witnessed furries for the first time in college, and then had to go and do some research because I was like, I am not going to be afraid of people who identify like this because
I gotta Google
fear is limiting. And if you don't feel okay
Carefully Google some stuff.
yourself, carefully Google
Very
things.
carefully.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, like, okay, let's say that you are kind of, I don't know, can we still say prudish? If you are kind of
Traditional.
against,
I
tradition.
sometimes identify further on the prude end of the spectrum. Like I'm a very conservative person.
Yeah, so
But
conservatives.
that doesn't mean that I want other people to be conservative people. Like I'm
Well,
not going to force other people to be a prude.
If you are too fearful because of your stances to educate yourself, find a trusted individual. Don't put it on your child, but find a trusted individual who you can say, I think my child is saying these things, or this is the thing my child said. What should I do? Like, that is why, as parents, we need communities, we need villages, you know, and I think you know, my husband and I have done this many times with Rory, and Rory knows this, where, you know, Rory may have said something to one of us, and we go to the other person and we're like, okay, this was my response. Should I have added or taken
puzzle
away
pieces
anything?
together.
You know, like, because I think that's
Oh, it
That's
makes me think
what-
of that post about the woman, the single mom whose son came out to her and just like casually came out to her and she didn't know what to say, so she was just kind of like okay, we can totally talk about more of this later. And then he left for school and she called the she Googled and found a gay bar and called the gay bar and asked the bartender if the bartender was gay. And then she said, okay, so what would you have wanted your mom to say to you?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say one of my favorite experiences at Pride last year was taking my youngest and in a stroller and just walking around and having conversations with other parents of children that were there, because when you have a small child, people know you're a parent or at least think you are.
A little bit more obvious.
Conversations with other parents,
Well,
having conversations. I saw a woman who had a shirt that said, "I think my daughter is gay. Talk to me."
yeah.
and I got
Also,
to.
all the free hugs.
Oh, I do
Free
love
hugs
the
from
free mom
free hugs
hugs.
from a dad.
And
Oh.
the thing that I like is, if you are part of the LGBT plus community, what I have experienced is that older members of that community know how hard it is to be a young person. And they are more than willing to be like, okay, your child came out to you. Here's what my parents did. Here's what I recommend you do.
Yeah.
You know, like, there is a plethora of information out there for parents who will just take the step and have the conversation. And even if you don't have to wait until your child comes to you about it. Like, you don't have to wait. You can make an effort to, you know, I think Target being in the news is a great opportunity. Hey, did you see this? What do you think of this? Because even if your 13-year-old boy shrugs and goes, "I don't care, my friend's gay, who cares?" Then you kind of can have the conversation of like, "You're right. I don't know why people care that much. Your friend's not doing anything wrong." And just leave it at that. Like, age appropriate conversations are important, but so is just having the door open, because I feel like a lot of kids these days, because of the negative experiences of their friends, probably assume that their parent will also be negative about it.
Yeah. And you will also
Oh,
pick up on the things that your parents say. They will listen. They
Yeah.
will hear if you're eating dinner and they're in another room and you start talking in a prejudiced manner. They're going to keep that in their brain for the rest of their life.
oh,
They're gonna-
because I mean,
cool,
children are
good to know.
always listening.
Always
Always
listening.
listening.
Even at 17 months old,
Yeah.
always listening.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so I guess it's just one of those things where it's like, what is the first step? The first step is to not hate something you don't understand.
Yes.
yes.
And then the second step is to develop a comfortable nature of understanding. Even if that understanding is,
That you don't understand.
this doesn't go with what I personally believe in my faith or something like that.
Yes.
So for me, I can't make that choice, but I understand what other people are talking about now. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's, I can't relate, but I understand.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a friend who is a very he's a very Christian man, and he from university. I like saying university because it makes me sound fancy.
I like it too.
From my university. But he is a very mature person, like quite impressive for being a 19-year-old.
He really is.
He really is. Because he will straight up say, I have a lot of very traditional Christian views, and I do not believe in these things, and I do not like want to do these things myself. But I am not, he told me straight up, he was like, I'm not going to stop being friends with people. I'm not going to stop talking to people. I'm not going, and he'll have conversations all the time. His roommate is part of the LGBT community, and he's totally chill with it. Like, it's not that hard.
It really isn't.
He
It's
is loving.
Earlier, yes. If a 19-year-old, not even fully developed in the brain, can go, and sometimes kids are better in this than adults are.
Yeah.
Which a lot of the time that's the case. But
Because they look at things simply.
and not judge you and be just accepting and
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to stop talking to you. I'm not
Well,
going to stop.
And didn't you tell me, like, he even clarifies, like, what pronouns would you like me to use?
Yeah.
And uses them.
Yeah, and he uses them too. He doesn't
because it's not his. Again, like, it does take more effort to be hateful.
Yeah.
Like, it takes more effort to be like, well, you told me from the very beginning. And I think college is kind of nice because you get a fresh start, so you don't have some of the hard, there are challenges when your child changes pronouns or something along those lines.
You're
you
like,
forget.
wow,
you're in a habit.
Years. Yeah.
And sometimes you can have that conversation with your child and say, you can say, like, okay, this might be hard for me. I might mess up.
Yeah.
And Rory and I've even had that conversation of like, okay, I'm probably going to mess this up occasionally. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing is
like you potentially used the wrong pronoun earlier.
So Rory and I have talked about this before because sometimes we've actually had the conversation, and I've told, like, Lori when we visited, I was like, okay, Rory uses they, them pronouns primarily, but at home, a lot of the times we use she, her, because the children are easier. Well, it's habitual, but also Rory has 2 younger siblings who right now are trying to learn the difference, you know? And so it's one of those things where, like, we're all learning together, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had the conversation of, like, we're not doing it to be hate-filled. We are doing it probably by mistake.
Shockingly, your children will understand the difference between, whoops, I'm messing up a lot, or whoops, we're just kind of, this is easier if we do it this way, and I'm doing this wrong on purpose because I don't respect you and I don't think your identity is real.
Yeah.
It's almost like children can tell if you love them.
Yeah. If you have that foundation, what are the talking points we've had in this episode? Like, have a
so many.
Unconditionally love your child. The rest, and have open communication with them. The rest of it, we'll figure it out. Is your child going through a goth phase? Okay. Then they can wear the makeup that they want, and, you can have conversations about it, but, like, honestly, it's not really your business. Does your child think they might be gay? Okay, they can wear the clothes that they want, and they can do the things that they want to do, and you have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Is your child a vegetarian? That impacts you differently depending on whether or not they're old enough to work a skillet.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I know that we've got to get going, and I know that you've got to get going, but I just appreciate, Rory, you coming on and having this conversation from the perspective of someone who is being parented and seeing your friends experience this, because I think it's so easy as parents to kind of stay in our own lane and talk to other parents when, as we've said multiple times throughout this episode, like, the conversation needs to include the individuals. You need to include your children in this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
They'll be confused. But yes.
Rory, you're a good person.
We usually say you're a good mom, and instead you're a good person.
I see. Well,
I didn't know. I was like, can't call her mom. Really want to call her a kid because she goes to university now.
You're a great mom. Thanks.
Thank you.
But yes, I was going to drop this at the end of the video because I thought it would be funny, because hello, LGBTQ community. How are you doing? I am a 19 non-binary teenager. I am a 19 year old non-binary teenager past adulthood, and I do go by they, them pronouns, but you'll understand that things are very confusing. So thank you so much. You're all good moms / dads / parents, guardians,
caregivers.
Children in the car as your parents listen to this podcast.
Children in the car.
Thank you. I like your radio voice.
Life.
Have a great life. All right. Thanks, sis.
Bye.
Bye.